Good evening, everyone. Welcome to BRAP. Hopefully, everyone can hear me. My mic's not having issues. I know last week I had issues with my mic. So, if everyone in the live chat could kindly just give me a quick mic check, let me know how I sound. And Bringer Light says, and here we go. Hopefully, everyone can hear me okay. So, I appreciate it. Just want to do a quick mic check. Sounds great. All right, perfect. All right. So, we got rid of that. We got rid of that issue. But again, want to welcome everyone to BRAP. Got a lot to talk about. And look, I got my Nikes on right now. Logic will be joining me here shortly. Is probably wearing his Sauconys, but I've got my Nikes on. Look, I'm going to do some victory laps. I'm going to do some victory laps because if you listen to the show, if you come here every week and listen to the show, whether you do it live or maybe you catch the replay later on. Oh, you know what? Falky, you know what? Let me see if I can get Falky on. I don't know if Falky's available. It's kind of a last minute invitation. I got to get this super chat. Board Country with a $2 super chat. With a big smiley face says the best place to play is PlayStation. All right. Thank you for that super chat, Borbor. Logic will come in as Nushino. That's pretty funny. He might actually. But yeah, I just sent Falky an invite. See if he could join us. Hopefully we get some of the other BRAP brethren in here. We actually had the return of Gaming Forte. Forte joined us last week as well. And we've had B Money on and Slow-Mo Backslap. Hopefully everyone can join. I don't know. Everyone's scheduled today, but hopefully they can join us. But yeah, definitely have a lot to talk about. And I said, if you listen to the show every week, if you catch the replay, we tend to, when we're having conversations around the business of gaming, those conversations are often centered around data points that we've come across, that we've read, either through financial statements, investor slide decks, Circana, Newzoo. We look at surveys from the ESA. We discuss trends. We don't go off the deep end and do a lot of stuff that's really based off fan fiction, right? We just don't do that here on the show. And I think that's probably why a lot of you listen, because we're trying to we're trying to do something different here. We're trying to give you pieces of information, and then you can think about some of the things that we've talked about, and come arrive to your own conclusion, or maybe do your own research. So that's really what we do. We're not out here making these bold predictions that the console industry is dying, that games are too expensive, that it's not sustainable. We don't do that. Look, I'll be the first to admit, are there challenges in the gaming industry? Absolutely they are. It's a high risk, high reward industry. It always has been. That's not new. Have games become more expensive to make? AAA games? Absolutely. Has the cost of labor increased? Absolutely. Those are challenges that many industries face. Actually, I had the opportunity to have a little bit of dialogue with the CEO of Moon Studios, and his name escapes me at the moment. I don't know why, because I do enjoy. Let me pull his name up again. Thomas Mahler. Yeah, so I was actually having a conversation with Thomas Mahler about game development, and let me see if I can pull up this. Actually, you know what? Falky just got back to me. Let me do this real quick. All right, we're gonna try to get Falky in here. Let's see if I can pull up this tweet. It was kind of an interesting. He was using a lot of anecdotal references, evidence to the idea of. I got to find this real quick. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to find this. Let's see here. Maybe I can find it here on my LinkedIn. Not my LinkedIn. I'm sorry. My X account. By the way, real quick, while I'm looking for this, I actually had the opportunity to play Marathon. I did the server slam on Friday. It's just not for me. The UI is way too. It's too busy, too much noise. Onboarding seemed overly difficult. I was like, you know what? I'm not doing this. But I also understand, like, I'm not someone that plays extraction shooters. Although I did purchase Arc Raiders and did put some time into it. All right, so I'm going to read. Oh, let me get this other super chat here. T Rock with the $5 super chat. What's up, T Rock? Says what we do here is tease Brap about his IPA obsession. Yeah, you know what? I actually don't like IPAs anymore. Believe it or not, they're just I don't know. They got my palate changed and they just started becoming very bitter. So I said to myself, I said, no more. I really don't care for the flavor anymore. Gaming Ledger, the $5 Canadian says, listening to the pod while holding my baby and playing Returnal again on my couch. I agree. Do not like Marathon UI. Yeah, the Marathon UI Gaming Ledger was terrible. Oh, terrible. I'm also not feeling the art direction. Just not. I'm not feeling it. It's really hard for me to really like. I'm probably not the target audience for this game. I'll admit that. But I don't know. The UI was just too busy, too noisy. Yeah, I agree with Game Ledger. Game Ledger says I got bored quick. I got kind of bored too. I was like, shooting mechanics were good, but I'm just not feeling the art direction. And yeah, just let me add. All right, we have Falky with us.
Ahoy.
Falky. Well, first
You-
of all, it's great to see you.
Yeah.
You know what that means?
Yeah.
We
You,
live another day.
for those of you living in the past, yes, you do.
For those who don't know, Falky is coming to us from the future.
Absolutely. You're
Where
in the
it's
past, man. Quit living in the past.
exactly. Falky is it's March 5th, 2026. So
It is.
yeah.
And it is almost no different from March 4th. We're still here.
We
The
are
big
still
mushroom
here.
clouds haven't happened yet, so
Oh well, I got to be honest with you, Falky. I'm a little concerned about mushroom clouds, and maybe I should have invested in some Vault Tech or something.
oh man, it should have. When they were serving, I completely off topic for the purpose of the podcast, but you'll get a giggle out of this. When the videos came out a week or two back, or a couple of weeks back, where they were serving crab legs to the people on the ship, I was watching there's a couple of YouTube channels that do investment stuff that I follow and converse with. And the second that stuff came around, I shared it with one of them and said, "What are you doing? Are you buying gold or are you buying oil?" And he went, "Oh no, I am completely dumped everything and I am buying oil." He's a day trader, like a speculative trader. He dumped tech, dumped a whole heap of other stuff, and just went and bought a crap load of oil. I was chatting to him this morning. He's made like 300 and something % return over the last 2 weeks.
Oh, I believe it. I mean, oil's been down for such a long. You know what's so funny, Falky, is I was thinking, I like if you've been following some of the geopolitical landscape or some of the geopolitical stuff that's going on globally now, and you saw the military buildup of the U.S. I don't mean to turn this into a show about politics or warfare, but if you were listening to what the president of the United States was saying, right? If you're looking at the buildup in the Gulf, right? The move, the position of the naval fleet aircraft carriers, you start moving assets into the region. You're not doing that for no reason, right? You're doing that
Yeah.
because you probably, right, are on the precipice of some kind of military action. And I was thinking to myself, oil's been down for a long time. And I was thinking to myself, maybe I should look into trading a bit. And it's one of those things where like I always say I'm going to do something like in the market, and then I don't end up doing it just because I get tied up with other stuff.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I mean, like, what's the price of oil now? I mean, I think at one point how much is the barrel of oil now? At one point, it was $80 US, I think.
Yeah, something like that. It'd depend on how that insurance impact is and
Mhm.
the guarding through the strait
Oh
will
yeah,
affect.
that's right.
Uh, what do we want? Brent oil prices today. Brent crude. Where are we at? West Texas crude 76 a barrel. Brent crude 83.38 a barrel.
All right. So I was off.
Yeah.
It was a little bit lower than that, I think, before.
No,
Gas here's
no,
been yeah.
it's been up. Like, where are we at? It's gone up like crazy over the last month. Because it was as low as where were we? It was like down in the 50 something, mid 50s at one stage back at the start of the year.
Okay.
Yeah, fourth quarter October to December, it averaged like $58, $59 a barrel. Actually, it has not been great. The oil price has not been great for producers for a while.
No.
No wonder they're cashing in. Anyway, yeah, I mean, there's plenty going on, and it's a day by day. Depending on what Donald does from day to day, and what he can get away with, and what they force him to change on, but yeah, I mean that area in terms of shipping and logistics, I would say freeing up the strait and allowing shipping to get through. If you look at the real time where how many ships are parked up in and around there, not able to transit, it's insane how much is backed up, and it's been backed up since the 2020, since the virus hit. It's been shipping issue after shipping issue. So if they can sort that out to a large degree and free that shipping lane up, there actually could be some pretty positive flow-on effects for consumers downstream of that area, particularly in energy, oil, and gas. But there's a multitude of other things that go along with that, as we are seeing hour by hour, because it's the only thing you can find on social media or any of the news sites, as to working out who's doing what and when it's going to achieve. But yeah, it's front of mind for a lot of people, and it's never a nice thing when there's conflict. But it being regional conflict rather than a global conflict at the moment. But yeah, we will
Be
see how we go over the next couple of weeks.
begs the question, if this thing escalates to a global conflict. It almost seems like Iran is pushing for that with, sending drones and missile strikes to some of the other
Mm,
Middle Eastern countries, which really hasn't worked in their favor. It's
no.
probably caused them to be be a bit more hostile towards Iran. But so yeah, just interesting. I mean, it's again, not totally surprised, and again, don't want to turn this into conversation or a podcast around some of the geopolitical things and conflicts that are going on in the world right
Yeah,
now.
but
But yeah,
still,
yeah,
it's still important to acknowledge that there is a serious and major conflict that's affecting. It's got effects on global markets,
oh, absolutely,
but
110% it does.
it's
Yep,
not. I was chatting
yeah,
to my son about this the other day
yeah,
because he was saying, "Oh, it's a global conflict." I'm like, no, there's global ramifications, but the conflict is within certain areas, and there's always countries of conflict, but it's
yeah,
not like
yeah.
World War II where you
No,
had
no,
one country trying to dominate Europe and then push into Asia. and then another country that's in Asia trying to overtake the whole Pacific and just marching through other countries and
No,
taking
not a
over
remote
other
close. No.
countries. So, but nonetheless, it is important to acknowledge that it's going on, and for those that are affected by it, it's always front of mind, and hopefully it gets resolved quickly and without unnecessary casualties.
Yeah, yeah. So, Falky, how much time do you have? Because I think that's going to determine.
I can give you about an hour.
An hour. All right. Let me. I had an interesting conversation with the CEO of Moon Studios, Thomas Muller, who replied to Colin Moriarty. Who Colin had tweeted out something here. Oh, excuse me. I thought I was sharing my screen. Let me do that real quick.
Oh, you're right.
All right. There's a tweet here. Colin says, "I've encouraged Sony to embrace PC and Switch for years, but it's fair to say that at 1.5% gross revenue, most of it Helldivers 2, PC releases aren't moving the needle. That 1.5% must outweigh any detriment to your ecosystem. This is a version of what Xbox learned the hard way with Game Pass." Yeah, so Logic and I were having this conversation about, because one of the investor or maybe maybe one of their, if it was on a financial report or maybe it was an investor slide deck that Sony put out, but there was that number, and I know we've talked about it, Falky, the 1.5 or less than 2% of revenue coming from software outside of PlayStation, right?
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
sorry, was I talking to you about this? I can't remember who I was talking about.
Yeah,
This.
I'm pretty sure we've talked about this.
Yeah.
And I was looking at this number, Falky. Let me know what you think. I was looking at like total revenue for PlayStation, like 30 something billion, right? For the
Yeah.
PlayStation business. They're only behind Tencent at this point. Right. And
yeah. It depends on when you line it up period, like calendar
Yeah.
month to calendar month, they are like, depending on what phase of the year you're at, one's in front of the other.
Okay. But then I was looking at I forget the slide deck where they had reported 13 point something billion in operating profit or something. It was that slide deck where they said, "Oh, this is the PlayStation 5 generation is the most profitable PlayStation generation we've ever had." So
Yeah.
I'm looking at this 1.5%, right?
Yeah.
And that revenue number. I'm like, that's not a lot. That's almost like Falky, dare I say this is almost like a rounding error?
Oh,
It
well.
well, okay, maybe that's a stretch.
Well.
I knew I wasn't gonna get away with that with you, Falky. I might be able to get away with get away with that with some other folks, but I just say rounding error in terms of like, the big revenue number and the 1.5%, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try. See if I can share something here. Hang on. If I'm going to try and share my screen, let me know if you can see it.
Yep.
I want to share. Where is it? Not that one.
Well, while you look at that, Falky, do you have it up now?
I do. Let me know if you can see it.
Yep. Hold on. Let me stop sharing my screen and there we go. All right,
So
Falky.
This is where I
got
live.
a spreadsheet, by the way.
I live in spreadsheet land.
Yes. If you've worked with a bean counter, financial analyst, they live in spreadsheets. And this is Falky's spreadsheet, which is reflective of, assuming this is PlayStation, because I see game GNS. Yeah, go ahead.
So this was taken from the last quarterly reports of Sony's quarterly earnings call, which was to the end of December, so quarter 3 for them to the end of December 2025, which they run 1st of April to 31 March for their financial years. So this was taken as an extract straight from this report to do some analysis on what's going on. So hardware, their game software totals split between physical, digital, add-on content, and other software. Network services, which is PSN, PlayStation Plus, and a couple of other smaller, like their rounding error style inputs from the network services that they get. And others is other hardware peripherals such as your DualSense Edge and your PlayStation Portal and those sort of things, right? That's important to note. The hardware is specifically, because it'll be written here somewhere, is revenue from game consoles, including PS4 and PS5. Yeah. Others primarily includes revenue from peripherals, including PlayStation VR. So the other revenue stuff is Portal, PSVR, and their controllers and stuff that are sold, not with the consoles. So this is the revenue pieces, right? This all here is in yen. Don't get frightened by the big numbers if you can read them. That's in yen. I'm going to boost this up a bit more so you can actually see it. So what I did was, I've probably incorrectly done that. Sorry, I'm just making adjustments as I go because I tend to do stuff on the fly. So other games are the percent of software sales, right? That's what these percentages are.
And that
broken
is
down by
real quick,
quarter.
Funky. That
Yeah.
is PC, right?
No, this is PC and Nintendo.
PC and Nintendo and
Xbox. So it's
Yes,
all
thank
other
you.
platforms.
Okay.
So if we could assume, you can take an assumptions and say, well, 50% of that is PC or 70% is PC because they got like one game on Nintendo and 3 games on Xbox, something like that they publish. Mostly MLB and Helldivers 2, and I can't think of what the third one would be over on Xbox. But anyway, Helldivers 2 sold really well on Xbox.
Helldivers 2 did incredible.
Comparatively.
Yeah.
But tailed off since. So anyway, so as a percentage, that's the quarterly percent, which is a straight formula, being, other software divided by total game software gives you how much percent it is. Grade 8 maths. It actually should be grade 5 maths, but we give the benefit of the doubt to some people. For the financial year 2024, other game sales as a percent of total software games sales was 3.84%. So far, year to date for this financial year, it's 3.78%. So you would say an average 3.81%. It's about 3.8% of their total games sold comes from non-PlayStation ecosystem. Now, if you bring in the foreign exchange rates, you can work out what the value of that is in US dollars per million. Well, last financial year, it was worth $632 million. So far, year to date for this financial year, it's worth $510 million. For a grand total over the last 7 quarters of $1.14 billion. What we don't have detail on is express detail on is the cost of getting that revenue. Just keep that comment in mind for a minute. And the percentages obviously drop when you include revenue as part of the total revenue. So not just looking at within the games piece, but when you add in all the hardware, it drops to a lower point. It's about 2.07% of total revenue is other game sales. So if you said half of that was on PC, you're looking at $556.6 million over the last 7 quarters would have been generated from PC, which is about right when you look at some of the analyst reports who get more data and detail than I do, or than I choose to do, because they pay for it. It's about right. What they reckon it was going to be, it's about right. So if they're generating 550, let's say for round numbers, 550 million over the last 7 quarters, then what does it cost to generate that revenue from PC? If we're just thinking about from PC. And if you're running a studio and it's costing you 200,000 US, so 200,000 US per person. So that's $200,000 US per person to have them there, and they're not doing anything other than sitting at a desk And that's all the labor costs and insurance costs and having them all there. And this isn't paying for the building. This isn't paying for the tech. This isn't paying for anything other than them sitting at a workstation. This isn't software licensing. This is any of that sort of stuff. 200 grand a year is the average in the US to have someone there. So if you've got, let's say, a team of 20 people working on a PC port, you're spending $4 million a year just in labor. And if you add on, facilities costs, software costs, this, and just ratchet it right up per game, and for a team per 20, you're doing it 4 million. You could quite easily burn $10 million, $8 to $10 million in a year to do a PC port. Now, if you've got 3 or 4 of them going, 30 or 40 million, just to do those ports, and you only do, 2 or 3 coming to market, and it takes a couple of years to get them there. One PC port could be done, depending on the coding and what's required, could be done with one team of 20 and all the rest of it, and you're going to spend $20 million to get there, right? So it's then got to generate $20 million to break even before you add on any of the corporate overheads, sales and general administration, marketing, any of that shit. If you're selling them, this is where it gets really fun. If you're selling them for $40 per, and you got to recover, what did I say? 20 million.
20 million.
That divided by that. And then let's bring it back to million units. You got to sell 500,000 units. How many PS games have sold 500,000 units on PC?
I don't have the numbers in front of me. I want to say Spider-Man maybe hit 700,000, one of the Spider-Man games.
Yep.
But I don't recall the actual sales numbers for some of the games they've released on PC. I'd have to go back and pull that. But yeah, go ahead, Falky.
Yeah. No, so and that's it. The numbers that we get, they're limited in their scope, but they don't get a 500,000 unit bump for every game that's going out there.
No.
So when you do that kind of maths, you go, all right, well, geez, that's a lot. Well, how much revenue would we generate if we just needed to sell 100,000 copies and we sold it at $50? We've generated $50 million. No, that's not right. I've carried an extra zero. Sorry. I'm still thinking in millions. 100,000 units at $50 a unit is $5 million worth of revenue. Right. We can run a team of 10 people for 1 year to make that port happen, and we can't have any marketing, SG&A, or corporate oversight or anything like that. So if we work on the assumption that whatever it costs to run the team is another 50% just to put it as a sort of gross margin, net margin piece, that the direct cost to produce this port is 50% of whatever it's on top of the labor, then you can only spend $2.5 million in a year, which is what, 12 people? Now we're getting in the realms of that ain't going to happen. And this is like, Sony had been saying this for a long time since they first announced it. We're going to look at it. We're going to do it case by case. We're going to try some stuff and see what happens. They tried the long lead at 18 months, didn't really work. They tried shortening it down and it got a bump, but even with the top flight games that sold gangbusters on console, they did okay, but they're still not covering the returns that they were expecting. But while they were, while Jim Ryan was burning a profit margin to support all these expansion points to see what would happen and whether it was worth doing or not. Now they're not burning the profit margin anymore, so it's not like they've got a set amount of funding where they're not competing against other things. Now they're back to the point of, are we going to invest money in a PC port? And with the knowledge that we have now about how that market reacts to our games, which we didn't have prior, are we going to invest the money in a PC port, or are we going to invest the money with Naughty Dog to keep that project going? Or are we going to invest the money over here on upgrades to our hardware? Or are we going to invest that money over here with guerrilla. Like it's not like they're on their own in this PC port world with a pre-committed funding arrangement, and they don't have to compete for it anymore. It's now back in the general pool of, if you want this thing to stand up, you got to make the financials work. And so Sony has been saying that. They've been saying that since they made this commitment back in 2019. We will look at it, we will assess it on a case-by-case basis where it makes sense to do so. Their multiplayer games require as many players as possible, and multiplayer games and live service games are very well received on PC. Their single player games, not so much. So it you look at how good Helldivers does on PC, and how majority of players of Destiny are on PC, and where that's generated from. It's like, I think 40% of Final Fantasy 14 players are on PC. It's a phenomenally big statistic when you consider the type of game that it is. But single player games on PC, there's hardly any of them in the top 50. And when you got to drop your price point down to be competitive, you got to sell more units, and they're just unable to do that. So I know it's a monster of a spreadsheet, but just in terms of bringing it back to dollar value, if they're having to pump in tens of millions of dollars every year to generate, hundreds of millions of dollars in the return, that's a pretty good ROI on direct investment. But you've got to make it work, and you can't afford to bomb too many. And the days of them getting, like, was it Horizon Zero Dawn? They said they got a 250-something% return on investment for that one, but they didn't get anywhere near that with Spider-Man. Was Miles? Was it Spider-Man Miles Morales? I can't remember which one it was now. It was it was either Spider-Man, the first one, or Miles Morales, and they barely scraped an 80% ROI. But those are based on the cost, the direct cost of doing the port. That's not based on that doesn't factor in, out of that they've got to pay for their marketing, sales, general administration overheads, corporate inputs, and all the rest of it. So if you got competing requirements for finite resources and finite funding, which is that's the industry at the moment. It's not 5 years ago where there's plenty of money being thrown around. It's 2026 and there's no money. Like, there is no money, no cash. That's when these things start to really squeeze. So hopefully people are able to understand that. I do apologize for throwing such big stuff at you, but this little piece down here, I just did some analysis quickly. So you got other game sales percentages and revenue. So then I looked at physical game sales, because that was a comparative point as well. So that makes up about, it's about 5.1% of the total game software sales, and it's what's that? 2.76% of their total revenue. So again, it's not, we're not talking massive difference to here. It's about 0.75% more, right? But then you look at, when you convert it back, it makes 1.5 billion over the last seven quarters. And there'll be people saying, oh, it's only a few hundred million difference, and blah, 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 why they bother doing it. Here's the difference. Physical sales doesn't necessarily cost Sony or PlayStation anywhere near as much as it does to do a PC port. Physical game sales is where a lot of the licensing fees for producing games on a console lands. That's money for nothing. They hand out a development kit, and like most of the time they just give them away. If you agree to publish on PlayStation, they'll give you the kit, and that might save you, $5,000 per kit. If you're a studio with 5 kits in it, that saves you $25,000. That's great. Guess where they're going to get you? When you put the publishing arrangement through, they charge you per copy. And it's not per copy that's registered and played, it's per copy that's produced. So this is less input here, less cost of input to generate more money. That's got some passive income parts to it as well. And that's that's easy. That's not costing PlayStation huge amounts like this is. So this has got a much narrower margin in terms of gross profit and net profit points as a business line than this one does. But yeah, this table here is a percentage of total segment revenue. Hardware's 24, 23%. Digital sales is still good. Add-on content, that's nearly a third of their
Wow.
revenue.
Wow.
Other software is 2%.
Yeah.
So it's, as I was saying before, that's marginal. Network services is 15%. That's pretty decent. And then there are other peripherals and hardware, and that's 7, 8%. So you can see where they're making the bulk. The hardware opens the gate for the software and the add-ons, and that's where they're making the cash.
That's where they make the money. Yeah.
Yep. And then the network is supplementary. If this was the other way around, where Nintendo's, the hardware is up, it's higher, much higher, and their physical game sales is much higher because they sell so many things on cartridge. But what's that? Say on average, what's that? 23% is hardware, and then you look at their game sales is about a quarter of their revenue as well. Add-on content's just over a quarter of it.
Mm-hmm.
If you add the peripherals in, hardware is more than a quarter. So, but again, I'm sorry to be boring people. This is the stuff that I live in. This is the analysis work that I do for fun. I do this. It took me 10 minutes last week just because on a whim I wanted to know.
But
So
Falky,
I pulled the information off the internet and did the analysis, and this is what I came up with. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. That's worth $1 billion, but it's worth 4/5 of. It's not a rounding error because who's going to give up $1 billion? But if that $1 billion comes at the cost of, $800 million or whatever it is to generate it over those seven quarters, that margin's going to have to compete against. Well, we could go and build a new game, do the next game from Sucker Punch, Ghost of Fuji or something like that, and we'll sell 10 million units.
Well, and not only that, we'll sell 10 million units, and then we'll be able to monetize on top of that everything else that game's going to do for us outside of that raw unit sale, like meaning microtransactions, peripherals, new controllers, hardware. I mean, it just that that monetization of someone inside the ecosystem, which they can't do on PC, which is kind of what I've been arguing and what people, when people were saying, oh, they're going to go day and date. I'm like, pump the brakes, guys. Like they're selling hardware, they're selling an ecosystem. And so, like, to your point, Falky, like this is, and by the way, this is what they look at, right? Like they're making this calculus too, and they're looking at the numbers.
They're doing this at a much deeper level. Like they are down in the micro.
Yes.
Where I would love to spend days just tearing this stuff apart with the data that they've got, because you'd be looking at trend analysis and tail off, drop offs, and the genre, the type, who's buying it, the demographics of who's buying what the feedback's like.
Well, that's the other thing I argue too. Like if we look at PC, right? We look at the spend in PC. People kept saying, well, they're not releasing their games day and day, and that's part of the issue here. And it's like, well, no, wait a minute, let's pump the brakes. Like if you look at the top, like the games that generate the most revenue, the genres that generate the most spend, most engagement, those aren't necessarily games that that PlayStation first party studios or first party releases would fall into, like the free to play games, the live service stuff, the sim games. I mean, those are typically where a lot of people are spending their time on PC. And so I've made the argument that the consumer there is a bit different in terms of their spending habits than they are on console. And someone said to me, "Oh, well, Fortnite still exists on PlayStation, and so does Call of Duty." I'm like, "Yes, they do." But I think want to introduce. We have the president and CEO of Sony Interactive Entertainment. We have Hideki Nishino with us. Hideki-san, how are you doing? How are you doing today?
I'm feeling good, man. I've been dancing in my underwear,
Well, are you wearing Saucony's?
I don't wear shoes when I dance in my underwear, man.
Well, but it's great. Great to see you, Logic. I love this spreadsheet that Falky has up here because I think it's important to give a kind of a deep dive, right? And again, to your point, Falky. I mean, they're looking at information, trend analysis goes much deeper than what you have here on the spreadsheet. But this is the type of stuff that goes into these decisions, right? I've seen some people say, "Oh, well, they were afraid that their games are going to be sold on Xbox Magnus," and I'm like, probably not.
No, because you're not selling anywhere else at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it was the argument that Magnus is going to have Steam, and then PlayStation games will be on Steam, and they didn't want that. I'm like, I know it's probably not it. It's probably the things that we discussed here, and like what you and I've talked about, Logic. That old saying, "The juice isn't worth the squeeze." And I think somebody in the chat said that this is kind of an experiment. And I think you said it too, Falky. This is kind of an experiment for them. They tested the waters. They collected data. The data showed, hey, you know what? It's probably better, to your point, Falky, to take that money and invest it somewhere else where we're going to get larger return inside the ecosystem, right? If we release Ghost of Tsushima on PC, that's just one unit sale of the game. It does nothing else for PlayStation outside of that $60 or $70 transaction. And that person probably isn't likely to go buy a PlayStation. If a consumer buys that same game inside or on a PlayStation, right? Now Sony can sell them the other stuff, the microtransactions, the subscription services, the DualSense Edge, the PS5 Pro. If you believe the rumor handheld, the earbuds, the DualSense, not DualSense. I forget what the Pulse Audio 3D headsets. And there's also I think a higher level where is it like a pro level headset for the Pulse Audio? I forget what it's called, but
Yeah, the
Yeah.
in-zone stuff.
yeah. So I mean that's kind of the point of how that ecosystem works. But let me grab the super check. Then I'm gonna go to Logic here. The Gaming Ledger with the $2 case says it was telling they rushed Spider-Man 2 out quickly, and that game actually, the Miles Morales game, I pulled up the numbers here. It sold about what I'm seeing is 450,000 copies. The most successful PlayStation PC release was actually Helldivers 2, which we talked about earlier, followed by Horizon Zero Dawn, about 3 million copies. God of War, about 2. Days Gone, about 2. Spider-Man Remastered, 1.3. Uncharted, the Thieves Collection, 480,000 copies. So those are just some of
We're
the
talking about on PC, yeah?
on PC, yes. Yeah.
What was that last one you said? The big one? Spider-Man 2, was it?
Spider-Man 2 was like 500,000 copies.
Yeah, right. What'd they sell it for? $60 a head or something?
I don't remember. Maybe 60 or I would say probably 60. You got to also remember the spend.
See again.
Yeah, the spend on PC is different. Like I talked about like discounts, right? Like that discount culture on PC. Yeah, go ahead, Logic. I just want to get your thoughts here. Kind of what you think, what Falky presented in terms of how they may be looking at the numbers and how like you and I've talked about. Maybe in this case, maybe the pivot was because hey, we looked at the data, we tried it, and maybe the juice just isn't worth the squeeze for us.
Yeah, I'm relatively in the same place with a few with a slight skew of nuance. I mean, I saw the comment earlier, and I'm not arguing with people or saying that their comments are wrong. I'm just plucking out some comments to point out just kind of how I think about this differently. This was a test and the test failed. I don't think the test failed. This is a viable business porting stuff to PC. It is not bonga. It is fine. And I think the point is that PlayStation is not looking for fine or just good enough. And the thing that stands is kind of as you guys talked about, right? Is that, hey, is there not something better that I could use those resources for instead of the kind of trickle down effect that I'm getting that just isn't really buying me anything. And so I think that's really where the screw is turning here. Gaming Ledger. I mean, did you already read Gaming Ledger super chat? I'm sorry, I was distracted for a second.
The Spider-Man one?
No, the
Oh, no. Here, let me grab this one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gaming Ledger with the $5 Canadian super chat. Thank you again, Game Ledger. Appreciate the support. Thinking it's possible PlayStation can bring first-party games to PlayStation Plus sooner, creating reoccurring revenue that helps offset or replace PC releases.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I mean, I'm sure that the hypothesis would have to be fully fleshed out. But like, just as I look at that, what I worry about is, there's a window, right? And within a certain window, you start getting people to the point of they're like, well, I don't necessarily need to play that game right away. If it's coming to PlayStation Plus within a relatively short period of time, and I can get access to it, then I can just wait. Now, again, obviously, you have a different demographic, right, in terms of the addressable market on PlayStation. You have plenty of people who will buy it, but I don't necessarily know that your over under is gonna work better that way when you have pennies on the dollar allocated to on a per title basis to people subscribing to PlayStation Plus at the premium tier versus the potential sales of that. So that could wind up turning slightly in the direction, not fully in the direction, right, of the cannibalization of sales that we see over on Xbox. So I don't, for me personally, what I hope, I mean, at the end of the day, what we're talking about is we're talking about freeing up cycle time from Nixxes from porting PCs. And so there's other things that Nixxes does, as I pointed out on Twitter today. They are really the tools and utility sharpshooters. They're really the ones who can go around and help people tighten up their pipelines, tighten up their infrastructure and deployment environments, tighten up their quality control. So I'm hoping that frees up cycle times to do that, to help get greater productivity out of the other studios, so that they can achieve greater velocity during their production pipelines. But I also hope that they get to do other stuff, like they've done remasters, right, that they've put on consoles before. There's other things they can do. So, that I'm all for.
Yeah, let me grab this super chat here. Bober Country, the $2 super chat, says PlayStation games on PC are some of the most pirated games. Thank you for that super chat, Bober. Then Street Shadow with the $5 super chat says, this is not a failed test. It's just the outcome was not what was expected. So it's a learning which informs what you do next. I'm a production manager.
Exactly. And they were open and honest and said that at every quarterly meeting and every business strategy update, that they were going to take it on a case-by-case basis and they would see how it went. And it, when you look at the growth metrics and all the rest of it, and the data they would have would be by region, by country, by zone within country, and all that sort of fun stuff. And yes, I geek out on it a bit. I get excited by that sort of analysis. I love that shit. But PC is the biggest growth market in terms of gaming at the moment. It's the only one that's really growing, but it's only growing in revenue size because of the microtransaction, and it's across, I think it's like 12 games or something like that, all live service. But it's where China is at the moment, and India and all the rest of those developing markets are all heavily PC based, and they're trying to push their console into that area. So you got to, like they said at the start, we'll give them a taste, show them what it's like, and then we get the console in there and see what it's going like. Now, does it coincide with their PSSR 2.0 uplift and a whole heap of other stuff, which, be lucky or unlucky that there's massive costs involved in getting a top flight PC at the moment because of other market factors that are way outside of PlayStation's control. They're just happenstance of circumstance that is the case at the moment. Who knows? That'll bite PlayStation at some point in their production cycle, depending on how they get their resources sorted out. But yeah, it's always been the case that try it, see what happens, get the data. It had to be considered and it had to be tested. Same as live service games. The money and the market movements and the information that was coming back out of the analysis, they'd been mad to have not tried it, but they tried it, didn't get the results that they were looking for, or it's not produced the results that they wanted. As Logic said, it wasn't going to blow the doors off the barn. It being just fine and sustainable as a business line is not what they want when they can invest that money somewhere else and make it go. I think the term is bonga, that Logic likes to use. But has it caused a mass deterioration in the value of PlayStation as a brand? No. Has it caused people to flee the console? No. Has it slowed down console sales? Doesn't look like it slowed them down beyond what was naturally going to happen anyway. Has it improved console sales? No, it doesn't look like it's done that either. So they've invested all the money into the program, and the outcome is it hasn't shifted the needle at all, good or bad. And if you invest in something and it doesn't produce returns, that's not great. If you invest in something and it shifts the needle in a negative manner, you pull the pin on it real quick. But when you're talking about, I was just saying here before, if 50% of their other game sales is 1.9% of their total game software revenue is coming out of PC. It has been consistent for the last, 7 quarters. It has not it's only once has it gone over 5%, and that was in the June quarter 2024. I can't even remember what released back then. It's not exactly setting the world on fire in a forward-facing trend, especially when it's as up and down as it is, and it doesn't have a tail. This is something I meant to say before, so I'm just going to zoom back in on this. Just bear with, not that much. Just bear with me while I prattle on for 5 seconds here. Seeing this, how it's moving. There's something really fun here. Where's the spark line? One of those. So it started good. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, and then I see how it kind of just dips.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It drops off, and it doesn't really come back. They've been investing in this thing for a few years. If I did the same thing for the previous quarter and tagged it in here, you'd still see it's up and down. That's not what they want. You invest in an area, you want it to grow. You don't want it to be up and down like that. And the tail, there's no tail. So you launch a game and it doesn't tail out like, Ghost of Yōtei does. It's like launch big numbers and then it slowly drops off. It's like these things in the quarter that they're launching, they're just spiking. And it depends on what they're launching as to how long the spike lasts. So there's absolutely there would be no desire here to go in and say, right, we're going to bring our whole back catalog in. We're going to bring in Gravity Rush and Gravity Rush 2, and we're going to bring in all that sort of stuff. Why is Bloodborne not on PC? This is why. The amount of money one of the reasons, the amount of money they'd have to invest in it to get it up to spec, let alone if Katakawa says yes, and now that Sony owns part of Katakawa and part of FromSoft, their ability to say no is a little bit more negated. But I'm not seeing anything here which suggests throwing big dollars at it, because if they did, and they got Spider-Man style units, did 500,000 units at $60, which I'd be very surprised. The amount of effort they'd have to put in to get it up to spec, the maximum they could do just on those parameters, you got 20% Steam selling fee and then a 15% operating profit at the game level, they'd only be able to invest $14 million, which is 50 people for a year or 20 odd people for 2 years to do the development. That's a constraining point that's pretty intense. So
did you say 48 million?
No.
Or did you say 4 to 8 million? I didn't.
Sorry. If they're aiming at $500,000 units at $60 for the sell, they can only invest 14 million if they've got a 20% Steam storefront fee and a 15% operating profit at the game level to come out of it, which is that's been just their numbers that get discussed a lot. Are they accurate? Well, they're in the ballpark. I don't know what the exact number is, but that's a fairly decent assumption. But yeah, if they're running a team, if a 20-person unit before overheads and all the rest of it costs you $6 million a year, then you got 14 million to spend. Well, you're at 40 people for 2 years, or you're at 20 people, at 40 people for 1 year, or just over 20 people for 2 years. You think about it, Logic be able to talk more about the workload that would go into doing like a Bloodborne port to PC from where it is. That is a stupidly short timeline. So you'd have to crank up your investment. If you doubled that and you're up to $26 to $30 million to do the port, and you're going to sell 500,000 units at best, like as an expectation, at 500,000 people going to buy this on PC, that's a reach. That's a big reach. Right, and again, this is the metrics of there's some flow-on effects that we're feeding into it at the start, but unless they've got a really quick way of getting them over there that's not labor intensive, that's why you're talking about labor intensive and using tools and all that sort of stuff. If you can halve the cost of production to get something on PC, then it becomes a margin point that's growing. Great. But if you're stuck with these heavy labor pieces, it's The Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2 going to PC in terms of generating revenue to keep the studio going. Like, they might have done ROI on budget, but they're not going to do ROI to pay for everything. They're just chipping in at the back end to add a little bit of cash into the can. And that's, again, it's not to say that it's chump change, because we're talking about $1 billion worth of revenue, or $500 million worth of revenue. But when you're putting that cost up against something else, it's got to stand on its own 2 feet, and you will always choose the project that's got the higher margin at net present value, or the shorter payback period, and a few other financial indicators for making decisions. Anyway, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I've got to head off in a minute.
I appreciate the.
I'm going to stop sharing my screen. So.
No, I appreciate the insight, Falky. Logic, any additional thoughts on what Falky, before Falky has to leave, and what he's what he's covered here, discussed?
No, I don't have anything else.
Yeah, no, Falky, that's so it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong here, it comes down to ROI, right? Where are you gonna get the greater return? Are you gonna get it investing on PC? And this is part of the argument too that I've heard. Well, to your point, like, it's not chump change, right? It's $1 billion so in revenue. And I've even today I saw people say things questioning Sony's decision. Some people saying this is a mistake. They're leaving money on the table. Obviously my perspective is I don't think they're leaving money on the table. I think they're just shifting their investments to generate more money somewhere else. And then that somewhere else, I would imagine, would be inside their ecosystem, where they can, you talked about, a tail in terms of, I think, game revenue, software sales. When I think of tail, I think of that. I think what you talked about, Logic, that I always forget the name of it now. What is it, Logic? Is it CLV?
Yeah. And before you,
Yeah,
I'll just make one comment. Like, a big problem with the prevailing judgments that are being rendered is people are making these comments as if PlayStation is just going to lay down arms and not do anything. Like, okay, we're going to stop porting our games to PC, and Nixxes is just going to sit in a corner and pick their boogers. I'm like, no, guys. Like, I'm pretty certain the C-suite officers don't have any intention of just not, like, this is being done because they are considering alternatives, other things to do, which will hopefully theoretically generate higher revenue and greater margin. The point is to put them on something else that burns hotter. It's not just to, fuck it. We just, we won't do anything. Hey, go ahead and just chalk up another 20 hours of PTO in all their accounts, and just let them take that time off. Like, what are we doing?
And that's part of what caused a lot of the reshuffling, the restructuring that's happened recently too within the teams. Can't have them sitting around doing nothing. They've got to be working on something.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of that too. Logic with Nixxes. They're going to shut Nixxes down, and it's like, no, I think Nixxes has also helped out with some other. I forget what games they've helped out with, um, but back to the thing of CLV, consumer. What is it? Customer lifetime value. I always forget. I always forget that one for some reason. Logic. Um, and what you were saying about like that tail, Falky. Like to me, like I think of okay, if we're gonna invest money, right? We're gonna invest millions of dollars. And we're not getting that. Go back to that what I said earlier in the conversation. That one that singular raw unit sale of Ghost of Yōtei. I know it's not coming to PC now, right? But let's just say it was coming to PC. You know, like you're not gonna get anything else. You're not gonna be able to squeeze any other additional pennies out of that outside of that one sale because that person sits outside your ecosystem. It's the thing that I've argued. I heard a content creator say, "Oh, well, just like they're bringing their live service games, they should be bringing their single player games to PC too because it means more it means more games. You have the ability to sell more software units. The same way you're doing live service, but like the economics around live service are a bit different than single player because with live service you have the opportunity to continue monetizing those people that sit inside that live service game through microtransactions, DLC, and so on. But I guess my point is, you know, as I was thinking about this and I was listening to what you're saying, Falky, and just kind of thinking about the ecosystem, it just seems clear that they are looking at this as, you know what, we're going to get a better ROI by investing in our ecosystem, doubling down on PlayStation hardware, and getting people to spend inside that ecosystem. That's where we're going to generate the most revenue. That's where we're going to have that longer tail in terms of spend. And that's where we're going to be able to, thrive as a platform. As a platform business. So, yeah, go ahead, Falky.
I was just going to say, I apologize. I'm going to have to head off.
Yeah, no worries, Falky. I meant to reach out to you earlier today, and then someone in the live chat's like, "Is Falky coming?" I was like, "All right, let me reach out to Falky and see if he can join." So I appreciate it.
No, that's all right. Thank you for letting me put a spreadsheet up. Been trying to do that for forever. So I'm not kidding. I am genuine to anyone who's listening. I kid you not. Bean counters live in spreadsheets, and I love doing that analysis stuff. I do that. As I said, I did that just for fun. That's just, I'm curious to know what the percentage is. So just bust out the spreadsheet, do some calculations, and then start doing. This is what they have teams. They've got hundreds of people employed and contracted to do this analysis every day. So when the decision comes down the pipeline, it's from data that they have scoured through at nauseum, at detail, and the volume of data they'd be going through would be insane to come up with this decision making that they do. And it's just a constant churn. So yeah, I can put my hand on my heart and say I love doing that stuff. And when I'm talking about those things, it's calculation based. I'm not making comments on these shows without having done some work, and I'm more than capable of doing the work. So hopefully anyone who was watching could keep up with that. One day I'll do a series and just start from a blank sheet and show people how these businesses are structured up in terms of profit and costs and revenues and how all those things sort of work. So one day, have to do it piece by piece because spreadsheets aren't for everyone. So
yeah, Falky.
Anyway.
Look, I admire your love of numbers and working in spreadsheets. I am not a fan of Excel. I do use Excel on a daily basis to track requisitions and things that I have in the pipeline, but it drives me nuts.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that.
So
all right, cool.
All right, Falky. Well, hey, thank you so much for dropping by again. Really appreciate the time, as always.
No worries at all. I'll chat to you later.
All right, Falky. Talk to you soon.
See ya.
All right, see ya. All right, Logic. Look, I joked early in the show, Logic. I'm wearing Nike Air Maxes right now. I know you don't consider those running shoes, but for me, those are running shoes. The thing, the whole thing with the PlayStation Now. Again, Jason Schreier, Bloomberg reported this again today that PlayStation was going to leave exit or stop releasing single player PC ports or single player exclusive games. I'm sorry, on PC. They're still going to do live service. We've talked about that on this show before. Why live service makes sense. Why it's different than single player. But the one thing that kind of stands out to me, Logic, is that I remember when Sony announced this. There was a lot of they're copying Xbox or copying Microsoft, and I'm like, probably not. And there were the proclamations of they're going to eventually go day and date. I'm like, probably not, because you know Sony's probably, I would imagine, saw what happened with Xbox when Xbox put its games day and date, and then started devaluing its hardware, the Xbox hardware. Um, and I really thought that was going to happen, just because I thought Sony was still invested in selling you the ecosystem, getting you inside the PlayStation ecosystem, so that you're buying games on the storefront. Falke ran, if you saw the spreadsheet, that if you saw the numbers where Falke broke down revenue by percentage inside the PlayStation ecosystem, the talked about the 30% margins, the microtransactions, subscription services. Those are big drivers, big levers that Sony can pull to monetize consumers inside their ecosystem. So I never really bought Logic the idea that they were going to go day and date on PC. I just didn't think that was going to happen, because I thought that was a bit I don't know. I thought it was counterintuitive to their business model. So I mean, Logic, I'm going to gloat a little bit. Because I had a lot of back and forth with individuals on social media about this. What I didn't think this was going to be the case, and today I even see it now, where we have the news of Capcom 5 million Resident Evil Requiem has surpassed 5 million units sold, and it's sold quite well on PC. And I've seen people make the argument, well, it's not it's not PC is the problem, it's PlayStation. Look at Capcom, and I'm like, well, guys, like, the PlayStation is not a third-party publisher. They own hardware. They're trying to sell you hardware. Capcom is not. They don't own a platform. They don't own hardware. They're not trying to sell you, the Capcom, whatever console, whatever it would be called. They're not trying to get you in their ecosystem. For them and for that business model, it makes sense to release their games as a third party to as many platforms as possible to maximize that reach. So.
And look,
Yeah.
I mean, I love a PlayStation game, but no, I can't think of a PlayStation game, and maybe I'm just not thinking of them all. I can't think of a PlayStation game that has as much breadth of wide appeal as certain Capcom franchises, like Monster Hunter and like Resident Evil. Like, to point at the Capcom sales on PC and say that, see, that's proof that, like, that's just a ridiculous reach.
Well, and the other argument is that, well, they should have put. The problem is that they didn't put their games day and date, and I don't necessarily think, Logic. I don't think that day and date would have helped. I mean, I shouldn't say it wouldn't have helped at all. They might have gotten an additional bump, but I don't know that it would have made that much of a difference. That it would have changed the calculus for PlayStation to say, wait a minute, you know what? This isn't yielding the kind of ROI that we want, and we're just going to pivot out. I don't think it would have made a difference, and I don't think that, because I think, just based on PC culture, the types of genres that thrive on PC, I think it's a slightly different market than console. And I think people tend to look at it, treat PC and console on equal footing, right? Because they have the same games.
Well, they definitely mischaracterize it. So, I mean, I think that they would have gotten a moderate bump, but I don't think it would have been a huge threshold shift. I don't think it would have skyrocketed the amount of sales that they made and the revenue that they're gathering. I also think that the characterization of why PC players aren't buying those games and the causality that's linked to them from certain content creators is just wrong. The one that I saw, the proposition was that, well, because PC gamers are seeing this game coming 12 months late, and they're like, I don't have time to be bothered. I got other stuff to play. Here's the new stuff. Like, I'm like, no. Like, again, look at the Steam data. PC players are not buying new games in large numbers in aggregate. Resident Evil is an exception. But the vast majority of games that they're buying are old games. This is one of the data trends that we've talked about for the last several years. That the games that are selling over there in large numbers are old games. And the few games that do sell really well that are new are incredibly small in number. It's a single digit percentage of the new games that come out every year that grab 91% of the new game revenue on Steam. And one of the examples that you and I talked about that I pointed out was like, look, one of those games is Civ 7, which is by all measures a bad game. It has a less than 50% approval rating by the Steam community. And this is sometimes one of the things that frustrates me with the Steam community is they will shit talk a game, right,
Yeah.
and rate it low, and it will still sell, which is what happened with Battlefield. I can't remember whatever Battlefield it was that was before this one. They crap talked it, but that thing was still charting on NPD every other month in the first few months of its release. So you have Civ 7 that is a bad to at least a mid game with a low Steam community user rating that is still selling in the platinum level when Steam puts out its metal tiers at the end of the year. And so if you're PlayStation, you're like, look, I'm going to invest the effort to put one of my tentpole single player franchises over there in the competitive environment that I'm walking into. Is that the things that really sell are old games, number one, and of the new games that sell, the competitors I'm going to be up against are people who can put out mediocre games and still outsell really good games. Like, why would I bother to do that as a business?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree, Logic. That's a great point. But that's the level of nuance. That's the type of thing that people don't think about. They just look at PC, they look at console, they say, "Oh, well, you know what? Resident Evil exists on both platforms. The Witcher 3 is on both, and a lot of the big that was actually sort of some of the responses that I got on X. Well, they're like, "Oh, look at Fortnite. Fortnite exists on console and PC." I think I shared that one with you when I talked about the differences, right, in spend on PC versus console. Um, um, but like I don't, again, I go back to data. I don't think, and I agree with you, Logic. Like I think there would have been like a bump, right? I just don't think it would have been enough. It would have been significant enough for them continuing this strategy. And clearly, look, they have the data. Like what Falky talked about, they're looking at the numbers. They have whatever ROI, whatever their return they're looking for. They're saying, okay, we're not getting that, and what we're going to do is we're going to take that investment that we would have had in PC and put it somewhere else, move it around to a place that we think that we can get more money out of. We could yield a greater ROI. But Logic, it kind of begs the question because the other narrative was more games everywhere. And at least to me, Logic, correct me if I'm wrong. The way it's presented, it's often presented as if it's an automatic win. Like, oh, put your games everywhere. More games everywhere means more sales. It's like, it's not entirely true.
It's preached as a silver bullet in the one industry of engineering whose mantra is there are no silver bullets.
Exactly. I mean, and not to pick on Xbox here, but I go back to their Q2 financials, and if that's truly the silver bullet, then I don't think we'd see, the what was it, negative, I forget, 9% in gaming revenue?
Negative 9% overall, negative 5% in content and services.
Content and services, yeah.
Across the holiday quarter.
Yes.
And what I said at the time was if you can't go big in your holiday quarter, And your excuse that people were given was that, oh, well, it's because people were tight-fisted because of the economy and fear and all this. I'm like, well, you certainly need to understand there's certainly not going to be not tight-fisted the quarter after January through March, when in America everyone's, you know, cash flow exhausted from all the money they spend on the holidays, and then we basically try not to spend any money until we get our tax return checks in April. So, like, if you're down bad one quarter, you could probably expect to be down bad the quarter after.
Yeah.
Then you go into the spring quarter, when people tend to spend money on vacations because they travel around for spring break.
Mm-hmm.
Then you go into the summer quarter, which is the quarter before you get into the holiday quarter, where people tend to not spend money, and you can kind of see the bow wave that you have in front of you. So it's not like you shouldn't be pitching it as people were just tight-fisted over the holiday quarter with an expectation that things are going to get better in the quarters that follow. And this is why, let's talk about another argument that we had this week. Maybe this you didn't have this much detail. This is why we say, don't be dismissive of data. Yes, it's UK data. Yes, it's heavily physical, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to look at all the data so that we can follow the breadcrumbs to Q3 2026 earnings, which are going to come out, and we're trying to see if they're all going to tend in the negative direction that we said that they were going to tend. So we get regional data from UK, from Japan, from APAC, from the US, and it makes sense to look at each of them. It doesn't make sense to just dismiss one just because it's not your home territory or because you think it's small. All of the data is pertinent.
I think some people were really upset that I shared a data point about Resident Evil Requiem in the UK.
Well, they were mad because the data point doesn't corroborate their narrative, you know.
Well, yeah. And I think Sony pivoting too doesn't corroborate their with the narrative they were pushing the last, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, whatever. Yeah, and I'll say this, and I kind of want to poke fun at some of the diehard Xbox content creators' logic, and in part because they come into my threads, and they just have a gross misunderstanding of platform economics, how the game industry works, how exclusives do matter, right? We talk about exclusivity a lot in the show. A lot of those guys got it wrong again, and we talk about trends, logic. There is a trend that I'm seeing across social media, across platform specific content creators, influencers, that they get it wrong a lot when it comes to their analysis of the industry, what they think's happening at PlayStation, and even their analysis of Xbox. That somehow Xbox is, I don't know what, playing chess. I forget what the analogy was. And that's been my takeaway. It's just my interaction the last couple of days, especially with the conversation around PlayStation, the end of PlayStation on PC, single player games. They're still going to release the live service games on PC, and they'll do that on Xbox too, because it just makes sense for them to do that again, because the economics are different, live service versus single player. But yeah, they just I think this has showed me logic that they have got it wrong, and they consistently get it wrong because they don't stop and think about the who, what, where, and why. Did they teach us that in like grade school? Or is that middle school? Is that the foundation of critical thought? Anyhow, that's my rant. Let me grab some of these super chats. Bloomberg Country with the $5 super chat says PlayStation is one of the main drivers of reduced game sales this gen. What is this guy talking about? Hardware. Horizon Forbidden West sales fell off a cliff after it went to PlayStation Plus. I don't know who he's referring to here. I don't know if that was Falky or you, Logic.
I think he and Gaming Ledger and Retro Guy or something were going back and forth. I think they sorted it out.
Okay. Game Ledger with the $2 Canadian PlayStation Plus Thought was after long tail sales dwindle.
Yeah, so I think Ledger was saying, hey, kind of again in the Xbox, what they verbalized, which is not what they did, which is when they originally verbalized, what games were we going to pick to send over to PlayStation? It was, hey, we're going to send over the games once we determine that they're basically their commercial revenue tail has roughly expired, right? We've sold as many copies as we're going to sell on Xbox, and so it doesn't hurt us to send it to PlayStation. So I think Ledger's saying, hey, once you see that tail dwindle on PlayStation, then go ahead and put it on PlayStation Plus. So the only thing I would say is, and again, I haven't looked at this in a while, but way back in the day, a couple years ago, where the argument was constantly in the back and forth over the impact of PlayStation Plus versus the impact of Game Pass, I noticed that games were coming fairly quickly to PlayStation Plus Premium. In terms of like, when you consider like the 7-year life cycle of the console and the games that it's important theoretically for you to play as a PlayStation gamer. And again, so if you're what I'll refer to as like a tier 2 or tier 3 PlayStation gamer, where you own PlayStation, but you're not in that FOMO edge that has to play like all of the exclusives like right away. Like you just like you're a regular gamer, and as long as you play those titles sometime during the life cycle that you own the PlayStation, you're fine. I noticed that there were single player titles that were coming to PlayStation Plus fairly quickly in terms of that life cycle ownership. So that might be something to take a look at, just in terms of, I think it seemed at whatever point it was that I took that snapshot and looked at it, I was like, oh, like everything is here that's been released like this generation, except like the really most recent stuff. So I don't have a good feel now for how quickly things are already coming over.
Yeah, yeah, I'm not sure either, Logic. Let me grab this second super chat here from Bulber Country. $2 super chat. Thank you, Bulber. Says, hey, Logic. God of War is really popular and it's rated M. I have no idea what he's referring to. All right. The Gaming Ledger with the $5 Canadian says, I think the funniest takeaway I got from some Xbox folks is they believe Jason's report was definitive enough. Is it wasn't definitive enough? I think that's what I saw. It's interesting too, Logic. We talk about exclusives. I mean, I'm actually seeing, this is crazy. The group that said that exclusives don't matter, I'm actually seeing them with the new leadership at Xbox saying, oh, maybe Xbox should bring back exclusives.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and Ledger just said he did mean wasn't.
He meant what? He meant wasn't or was?
Was not.
Oh, was not. Okay, gotcha. Okay, yeah, that's a funny thing too, Logic. Like with I forget her name now, the CEO of Xbox,
Asha Sharma.
Asha Sharma. Yes, thank you. She talked about like the focus being on the console, and people are like, well, maybe they should bring back exclusives. And I'm like, well, guys, I thought exclusives were anti-consumer, and that exclusives were antiquated. Logic. This is crazy. I saw an Xbox influencer say, no, exclusives aren't antiquated. I'm like, guys, you were saying they were antiquated when Sarah Bond said it.
Yep, absolutely.
And I'm sorry, I will say this. I saw someone else say, well, you know what? Like Xbox should focus on, they really shouldn't focus on exclusives anymore, or exclusive games. They should really focus on some of their platform features. And I'm like, I understand platform features can be differentiators like Game Pass, but I just don't think those things move hardware the way exclusives do.
I mean, I think they have great platform features now. Like this is the wackadoodle part of it, and part of the thing that I think these guys in their kind of religious theocracy like just don't think about, like,
oh my god,
the Xbox has great platform features. Like there's
it absolutely does.
There's lots of things there that I'm like, okay, like this. In a normal market, I would think that these things would be a slam dunk. You and I have talked about these things. Smart Buy, right, should have cast a flashlight on a bunch of rats. Like every time somebody showed up with a game where you didn't get Smart Buy or whatever, like I thought people would be like, hey, why am I paying for that game for your game, and it doesn't grant me the same entitlement that this Xbox, this first party game does. There's lots of things from a platform perspective. They still, I think personally, they still from a the legacy of what is it, of online multiplayer, I think still like resides with a significant weight on the Xbox side, just in terms of elegance and how well it works. And sure, absolutely, PlayStation has caught up, but I think they have great platform features. But clearly, again, but then I would then look at the market and say, okay, given that Xbox has great platform features, and yet the market share is as lopsided as it is, one might assume that great platform features is not the product differentiator that moves the needle in today's current environment.
I was just about to say that they're great features, right? They're great additives to a platform, but they don't move the hardware in mass. Like they just don't. To your point, because of if you look at, like you said, the disparity, right? The numbers, I just lost my train of thought because I'm dead tired. The hardware's the numbers, right? The sales numbers. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah, they just don't. They're not as important to the mass market, right? But I also think logically, there are also things that can be duplicated, right, on another platform. Like eventually, like at some point, like with PlayStation, like I go back to we talked about Xbox Live. Remember peak Xbox Live, the OG Xbox 360, and I think you talked about it. Like you said, like the PlayStation 2 had like it had like some kind of like wonky.
We still
Yes.
You can still see the technical debt left, like the wake of technical debt left by the fact that PlayStation 3 came with that little teeny tiny one earbud right in the box. And like in so many like you would jump on Xbox Live and it would be a lobby full of people thriving, vibing, everybody chatting together, right? Because this was the day before parties really came along and before people were kind of isolated in their online fiefdoms. And then you would go onto the PlayStation Network, and I would do this all the time. Like I would be on Xbox Live, and then I would flip over and you would go over to the PlayStation Network, and nobody would be talking. Nobody would be like, you'd be in a room full of people, and there'd be like one dude on comms.
There'd be one guy on comms. Yeah, it was pretty bad.
And he would sound shitty because he was on that little goofy ass little tiny earbud.
Little earbud, yeah.
Have a real Bluetooth headset.
Yeah, no, it was like PlayStation's solution to live service or online play was so bad in comparison to Xbox. My point of bringing that up though is that, as you said this a couple seconds ago, like I think, like I agree with you. I think Xbox has great features, right? Like Game Pass and Play Anywhere. I think those are great features, right? But those, to your point though, those aren't features that move. They're gonna sell a lot of hardware, right? They're not things that are gonna appeal to the mass market. But I think that those things are complemented well when you have great first party exclusives, because I think Logic, back to that time period that we're talking about, the PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, the one thing Xbox, the OG Xbox, the Xbox 360 did well was that, yes, they gave us Xbox Live, but they also gave us so many great games that took advantage of Xbox Live. So it was the Xbox Live was the icing on the cake. Like, and you could have these experiences that you couldn't get anywhere else. And then once PlayStation caught up, like to me, those features didn't really matter as much. It goes back to great games, great gaming experiences, things that you can't get on other platforms. I think that's where. See, someone said in the live chat. Well, game like Xbox has tried everything possible except make great exclusive games over a long period of time. To me, I think that's when they started that's where they started missing the ball, and I think that's when they started focusing a lot on platform features as opposed to exclusive games. I think that's when they started losing, some of the I don't want to say goodwill, but they started losing the fight, if you will, with PlayStation.
I actually think it's because they stayed on it, right? Like I will, going back and doing a postmortem now of Phil Spencer's career.
Yeah.
I always say that I was most in love with the years 2016 through 2019. And that was the point that even back then, I would talk about and say, so what's clear to me is that they've decided that they've lost this generation, and that expending a ton of energy trying to get that back doesn't buy them a lot, right? Ton of investment for very little gain. So what they are doing is they are doing this big coil up and winning of hearts and minds to try and set everybody, like get everybody lathered up for the entry into the next generation. And so 2016, you had the backwards compatibility program. 2017, you had Game Pass. 2017, 2018, you had the acquisitions. 2019, you had PC Game Pass day and date. Right. And it was this big, and I've always talked about this, like this is a thing that Xbox marketing used to do really well. They used to do what was called this Rolling Thunder campaign, where you get like a little drip, a little drab, like then the drum beat like steadies out and quickens and becomes this like big crescendo, right, as you get closer to like a game releasing. That's what they did with like Halo 2. And so this, to me, I felt like, oh, this feels like Rolling Thunder again. But it's spread out over these years, over the back half of the generation. But the problem is that then on the entryway into 2020, and while those things were going on, there wasn't a focus on the development teams to basically say, hey, we've set you up. We've set you up with the alley-oop. On day one of Xbox Series X and S, we need you to knock it out of the park with big games to be paired with this winning of hearts and minds that we've done. It became entirely dependent upon the winning of hearts and minds. It became entirely dependent on encouraging that evangelism that Spencer talked about in his email. That, and then what started to piss me off is 2020 to his end, that became all that they did, was this constant effort to win hearts and minds, this constant effort to be talking every other week, doing an interview, saying a bunch of BS, trying to convince the world that their problems were everyone's problems, and a lack of focus on execution.
I don't mean to laugh. I laugh at, I'm not laughing. I'm laughing at this what you just said, that Phil Spencer tried to convince the world that their problems were everyone else's problems. And then it's like, no, Phil, that's not true. Nintendo's doing well. PlayStation's doing well. You're the only one that's struggling right now. And that bled over to the content creation space, by the way. Oh, the industry's collapsing. First party exclusives aren't profitable. They're not sustainable. Yada yada yada. That stuff. But I'm sorry. Go ahead, Logic.
No.
I thought it was a great point to bring that up. But yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that was it.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. Like that whole the sky's falling and winning hearts and minds. I'm like, no, just put out good games, great content. Like I don't think it's that. I really don't think it's that difficult. Oh, well, the creation of those great games is difficult. But I think the idea of creating like, hey, we need to focus on these platforms, these pieces of hardware that we create are made to do one thing. Play video games. They do a little more than that, but you get my point.
Yeah, and it's weird. Like there's something else, something that we're missing, that we've been missing. Like in that, maybe the other part of it is that the bets they made were wrong too. Like,
well, I think they overestimated Game Pass.
Well, I mean, going back to that topic of like the creative side and the titles and like making bangers. I'm like, it seems like, I don't know, and this is just a theory. I'm just floating this. I'm thinking as I'm talking. Like they go after Bethesda and nab Bethesda, and then like I feel like, while thankfully for them, Bethesda was productive in the first couple years that they got a hold of them, because initially in the turn of the corner, Bethesda Bethesda carried Xbox. And then when Bethesda started to tank, I would say then Obsidian carried Xbox. But the weird thing is that, I feel like as they acquired Bethesda, then Bethesda started putting out the most mid games. And I love Obsidian. Obsidian is one of my top 5 favorite studios of all time. But Obsidian's games haven't moved the needle, except for I always want to call it Groundhog Day. I guess they said, from that Bloomberg interview, they said Grounded had done well, but like Avowed hadn't, and the Outer Worlds hadn't. So it also seems like they're acquiring talent, and then that talent doesn't do what they would have hoped that it would have done. I mean, ditto for Activision. Blizzard kind of on the rise. Hats off to Johanna Faries. Who came over, who was the GM of Call of Duty, and then kind of funny, Johanna Faries leaves Call of Duty, and Call of Duty starts tanking, and then goes to Blizzard, and Blizzard seems to be on the rise.
On the rise, yeah.
I wonder if there's any correlation there.
Maybe.
But hey, she couldn't head the Xbox division. Anyway.
I think there's reasons why they picked Asher Sharma. I have my suspicions, but go ahead, Logic.
No, it just seems like, even. I mean, so there's two things that could be possible. One is that they're identifying talent late. And they're identifying teams that they think will maintain their peak, and they actually don't. And I actually don't believe this latter hypothesis, but I know a lot of people would lean into it. Or there's just the theory that, studios go to Xbox and they become mid.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I don't want to. I don't want to say the studios go to Xbox and become mid. I think it could be like with Bethesda's example, that maybe they caught Bethesda on Bethesda's way, like on the tail end of Bethesda, like peak Bethesda, right? Like if they had picked up Bethesda in the 360 generation, Skyrim, Oblivion. I mean, yeah. I think part of the issue with the Bethesda games now, in particular, like Starfield, I don't know if that formula really works anymore. That that open world, you can still wear 1,000 sandwiches. I don't know how. I don't really think that. I think like when it came out through the Xbox One, the OG Xbox One gen and the 360, it was like wow, because we had never really seen anything like that. Now it's like, at least for me, it is. And I'm not saying that there aren't a dedicated group of gamers out there that don't love those types of experiences, those types of games from Bethesda. Obviously, they do. I just think that maybe that design philosophy might be a bit, I don't want to say archaic, but may not resonate as much with gamers today as it did, 20, 10, 15, 20 years ago.
So Neil Druckmann is 47. Todd Howard is 55.
Yeah.
I would say Bethesda's biggest problem right now today is Todd Howard. Because they can't get out from underneath the umbrella or get out of their own way of, in my opinion, thinking any other way than how Todd Howard has coached them and driven them. Why is it Neil Druckmann and Naughty Dog seem to still have the stuff, but Todd Howard and Bethesda don't?
I don't. That's a great question. I don't know. I mean, maybe because people don't want to manage, live in a world that's not live in a world, but I don't know. Maybe people are just tired of Bethesda games. And I say tired, I mean like that design philosophy, that Todd Howard design philosophy of you can interact with everything. Maybe that's overkill.
I want to
maybe
say one
maybe
thing.
I was gonna say maybe because those games Logic you know how I feel about the creation engine. I just don't think like that the Bethesda charm, or whatever you want to call it, like that it doesn't work for me anymore. You remember that? Like, oh, it's a Bethesda game. Used to kind of be like a thing, right?
Yeah, I always called that out as bullshit. Like you guys gave them a pass for all that stuff all those years, and that's why you wound up with Fallout 76.
I mean, well, yeah, but no, I mean, I think that's that part of that Bethesda. Like, I think like, and maybe there's like someone said in the live chat, it's archaic because it's been passed by competition. You look at like CD Projekt. Somebody mentioned Valentry says, CD Projekt Red, and you think about CD Projekt Red, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 type studios. I think of Larian. I think of I would throw Obsidian in there. Like I just feel like they are studios out there to do open world better than Bethesda now. Where I feel like 10, 20 years ago, Bethesda was the open world studio.
Well, one definite difference is because remember Joseph Fares, and I know I just said Johanna Faries. Joseph Fares, head of Hazelight Studios, said on Christopher Drink's podcast, he said, he would give a nod towards Naughty Dog, who is a AAA studio, who is still trying to kind of push the boundaries of creativity. And I would say one thing that's different, weird different, is that it seems like Bethesda, and I mean Bethesda the studio, right? So Todd Howard's, it seems like Bethesda's primary intent is on just iterating upon the template that was already their success. Whereas Naughty Dog seems to be doing that, seems to be constantly trying to kind of push the boundaries of the last thing that they did. And it's not, and that their intent isn't to just kind of like template games. Maybe not like in some ways there's definitely the DNA of like when they do the sequels, right? There's some of the DNA that's the same. But I mean, The Last of Us Part 2 is a significantly different game than The Last of Us.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Intergalactic turns out.
Yeah, and my sense of it, again, I'm just going off like gut and like the very small bit. My sense of it is it's not Tlu in space.
I don't think. I don't know. I'm not getting the Tlu vibes.
Right, which is which was the running dialogue on Starfield. Right, was that Starfield was Skyrim in space?
Unless it's a revenge story. Then I might have some thoughts on that. But go ahead.
Well, here's the thing. I haven't seen any sad dads.
No.
Which is so I haven't seen like a Joel archetype. I haven't seen like, again, and the main character seems to be, she's not Ellie.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there'll be some similarities between her and Nathan, maybe, but like a thing is consistent. Like this is clearly going to be high production value, heavily story and narrative driven, cinematic, like all that kind of stuff. Like that's part of the DNA. But the approach seems like significantly different.
Yeah, it does seem like a different game from The Last of Us. Just like The Last of Us felt like a different game when they first revealed it, in comparison to Uncharted.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Logic. I want to ask you a question before we wrap up the show here. I know you're playing Resident Evil Requiem. What are your thoughts?
Ooh, man.
Goaty.
What's that?
You know how I feel. Goaty.
So first of all, I haven't played a ton of like heavy performance driven games so far this year. This is a game that asks a lot of your PC, but that obviously delivers. There are a few things that I think one of the big story things that I thought of earlier today that I think and I don't know, because maybe my mind will change. I'm about 4 hours into the game right now, and maybe my thoughts will change. I think going into it, there was this broad impression that kind of you play through the parts as Leon as a badass, and then you play through the parts of as Grace, and she's just entirely helpless. And I will say, going into the start of like hour 3, Grace is not helpless. Um, she's not a badass like Leon is, but like I'm playing Grace, and I'm going into rooms and going through kind of the tactical consideration of like, okay, there's a certain amount of challenge that I know that I can surmount, right? There's a certain amount of like, depending on how people, zombies are spaced in the room, and depending on what weapons I have, and like there's a particular scene where you're going into a room, and there's bad in the room, right? Because you've heard it before.
Mhm.
And I went in, and I crouched, and I was like, oh man, I wish I had Ellie's like Tilu, like whatever that power it is that she has, where you like gray things out and you
Oh,
can
you
see
can
the
see.
outlines.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I wish I had that. But so I just crouched and listened. And I'm like, are there 2 zombies in the room or 3? Because I'm looking at my ammo, and I'm like, if there's 2 zombies in the room, I've seen enough of Grace's combat effectiveness to know that I feel comfortable taking them on. But if there's 3, I worry that I don't have enough bullets. So I go, I think there's 3. So I back out of the room. I know that there's a 3rd level. I'm like, I'll take my chances on the 3rd level, and see what I can find, and then I'll come back, because there might be something in that room that I need. Turns out I turn a corner, and I get like 5 more bullets. So now I have 12 bullets. I'm like, but my point is that I'm seeing enough combat and enough combat effectiveness from Grace that I can start quantitatively measuring how much of a threat she can take on. And she's capable enough that I'm bullish that if I'm below that threshold, I'm going to go ahead and go in and play a Bogart, you know? And so I think there's a little bit of this, kind of some of the background noises with her, the whole like sniffling and, that kind of like gives you the impression that like she's just a wet napkin. She's not a wet napkin.
But she's not. No,
Yeah.
that's a great point. She really isn't. I mean, that was kind of obviously, like Leon Kennedy, we all know Leon. He's a badass. I had some concerns with Grace because of the whimpering, the trauma, right? There's I won't give away the story, but there's some trauma there, right? There's a little bit of anxiety. I mentioned that to you. Like, one of the things that I thought was really, really, really interesting, really cool, and this is more of a like just attention to detail type thing, where when Grace is holding her weapon, her pistol, like she's like nervous. You can see the handgun shaking, right? Like you're not gonna see that with Leon, but I agree with you. Like she is capable. That was actually one of the concerns I had. Like, am I going to enjoy playing as Grace? Like, is she going to prove herself to be, I guess, reliable in combat? In comparison to playing as Leon, because Leon's just a badass. I mean, even the weapon he uses, the Requiem, it's almost like a one shot, one shot kill.
It's like a shotgun pistol.
Yeah, so exactly what it is. But no, I mean, she is. I'm actually, I haven't even really thought about like Leon as I'm playing with her, and partly because there's a lot of like tension in the game, right? You talked about like the zombies. Are there 2 or 3 zombies in a room? You hear the zombie moans. You hear the walking right upstairs sometimes. A lot of intense enemy encounters. The one thing I thought was the one thing I like about Resident Evil Requiem logic is that like I don't know, what are you playing, first person or third person?
I left him in the defaults, so I'm
Okay.
playing, and I've tried switching it, but I have switched back. So I am playing Grace in first person, and I'm playing Leon in third.
Okay. Yeah, I've read other people kind of do the same thing. I'm playing in third person. I like that they give you the option to switch between first person and third person. Because for me, kind of like it gives the gamer the experience of experiencing like what it was like to play. Like if you played Resident Evil 7, that was first person. But if you play like some of the older Resident Evil games, those were like third person, more action oriented than Resident Evil 7. Resident Evil 7 felt for me a little bit more stealth like than it did some of the other more, I think, like action oriented Resident Evil games that were in third person. But I like the fact that they allow you to play or give you the option to play in either eh, first person or third person to kind of give you those different experiences. Um, you talked about PC logic and how this game is demanding on your PC. This game looks incredible. I know you're playing it with path tracing also. I can't even imagine what that looks like.
Yeah, and I say, yeah, I say demanding, but I don't want people to misconstrue that. It's not like it's demanding in terms of if you throw top end hardware at it, you will be rewarded. But it's not like it's like making the PC like gasp, right? Like it's doing a 3.5 mile run.
Yeah.
So I'm playing on my 5080. I do have path tracing on. I said I was going to turn it off, but I turned it on. I'm DLSS on in auto. Here's one other. I am playing at 4K. And like I said, yeah, path tracing on, and I'm getting in excess of 140. Oh, in frame, and I am using 4x frame generation.
Wow.
And I'm getting in excess of 144 frames per second. That, quite frankly, is ridiculous with path tracing on.
That's crazy.
So, and I do have some additional testing that I want to do. Was actually I've done some frame pacing testing and some frame time generation testing in the early parts of the game, and I was doing that without frame generation. And I was getting I think I was getting in so with path tracing on, then I was getting 61 frames per second on average, and with path tracing off, ray tracing on high, I was getting an average of 101 frames per second. So I'm actually really surprised that with 4x frame generation, I'm getting like way in excess of 144 frames per second. So I'm not exactly certain of that analytic that I'm seeing right now, and that's just with me seeing the frame counter, right? I don't actually have a test harness rigged, so I'm gonna get a little further into the game and actually rig it for testing again, and run it to make sure that what I'm seeing is accurate. But regardless, I'm getting frames that are well above my comfort zone or the part where I start getting bothered by PC performance. And that's just amazing, It makes me feel really great, about being on an RTX 5080.
Man, I'm jealous. I'm playing on the PS5 Pro with Pisser 2.0. But it looks great. I mean, I have no complaints. I think the game on the PS5 Pro looks awesome.
Yeah, and I've heard that it works. I would be happy playing this on my PS5 Pro. Yeah, but I mean, by all accounts, this is just one that Capcom has knocked out of the park. I'm both congratulatory, but also, I want to be a little restrained. Like, I think Capcom has done a great job. They've done a great job delivering a highly performant, beautiful looking game out of the gate. And like we say that way too few times, right here in the mid 2020s. And so it's great. Resident Evil 7 looked good, I thought. Resident Evil Village looked good, I thought. Resident Evil games, over this last, 3-game series or whatever, have looked good. But when did Village come out? 2023?
I think so. I don't remember. I played Village a little bit, but didn't really care for it.
Oh, actually, 2021. So I didn't realize it had been.
Village came out in 2021?
Oh no, that's when it takes place. I don't know. Did 7? Yeah, Village. I'm seeing Village came out in 2021.
Oh wow.
I didn't realize it had been that long. So yeah, so that's kind of one of the points. So yes, RE7 and Village looked great, but those games, were 4 years ago, 5 years ago, or earlier. What we have talked about over the last few years when it comes to Capcom and RE Engine is Monster Hunter Wilds and Dragon's Dogma 2, which are not performance games and have major problems on PC. And so while I'm pleased to be talking about a game running on RE Engine, performing well, it's still in that pocket where I say nothing plays good on RE Engine except RE. Right? And then when they use RE Engine for other stuff, it seems to not do well. So they claim that they've learned a lot from Monster Hunter Wilds, and that therefore, like, later games on RE Engine will be good. I hope that will be true. I guess Pragmata is also on RE Engine, and everything that I've seen, including even stuff today, Innate has once again confirmed that Pragmata demo is butter smooth. So let's hope that it proves itself out throughout the year and as we see more RE Engine games.
Like I said, Logic, this is my game of the year so far. Great story,
Well,
great
it's only March
characters.
BRAP that would stand to reason.
I'm gonna. I think this game will be in conversation. End of the year, I'm gonna say at the Keeleys. I wouldn't be surprised if this is nominated for Game of the Year.
It's really early going, man. We have a lot more games.
I get it.
And this was really short.
I get it. Just a feeling, gut feeling. But no, I don't disagree. It is early. It's only March. I can't think of the other big releases that are coming out right now, but yeah, no, I don't disagree. Yeah, I'm enjoying it, Logic. I've obviously, big fan of Resident Evil. Great to see the franchise thriving again. And I love, I'm playing with the DualSense Edge. I love how they've incorporated the DualSense Edge as a, the DualSense controls have that little built-in speaker. So I love how they've used that feature for Resident Evil Requiem. Where, like, I'm playing it, like, sometimes I'll be playing with my headsets on, or I'll be playing it on my surround sound system. Excuse me. Excuse me. And then when I'm playing on my surround sound system, I can hear, like, the audio coming through the speaker, of the controller, like when I'm reloading my weapon. You can hear that, like, coming through. It just adds kind of a slight little level of immersion to the game. I think it's pretty cool that they're using that.
Yeah, that's gotta be pretty awesome. Because to be quite honest, for someone who has not cared for, I was never a big survival horror fan, but I especially have been turned off to survival horror since my co-hosts on E2KG, we used to give each other game assignments, and so they gave me Outlast as a game assignment.
Ooh, I won't play that.
and I hated survival horror since, like, I played that game all the way through, and I was like, yep, nope, not playing survival horror ever again. I quite honestly don't feel like this one is that scary. That may also be because I'm hell bent on this thing of trying to play games through to completion this year, and so I'm much more concerned about just finishing RE9, because I see other things coming down the pike this month that I want to clear out room in my queue for. And so I'm just kind of bullishly like trying to get through the game. So that may have something to do with it, but yeah, I don't feel like the handful of jump scares that I've had, and I'm creatively, I'm just not a huge fan of jump scares. But I don't feel they're as extreme as maybe RE games have been before, but I don't know. But I wonder if my point is, I wonder if the DualSense Edge maybe makes those things a little more impactful.
Yeah, I think it does a little bit. I would say there's more jump scares Resident Evil 7 Biohazard.
Yeah, RE7
yeah.
is a messed up game.
Yeah, like that. Yeah, like here, piggy. I'm like, no, we're not doing that. Like, we are not doing that. I am not. Nope, not doing that. I think for me with Requiem, the tension really comes from not like, oh, when's the next scare coming, right? It's more so the resource management. Um, and like, just like I would say resource management and whether or not I have enough bullets. Do I have a weapon if I get into a sticky situation? Do I have do I have a knife? Um, that's where most of the tension for me comes from with Resident Evil Requiem. Um, I don't know, maybe that changes with like if I switch to the first person mode or the first person perspective. Um, but I definitely think Resident Evil 7 definitely had more jump scares. Like it just I don't know. Like Resident Evil 7 felt claustrophobic to me at times. Like when I'm walking through the house, you know. I don't know. Yeah, it was just different. It left a mark. Like, I think about the here, Piggy, and I forget the name of the family. God, what's the name of the family? Resident Evil 7. I can't remember now. I do like. I don't know. I'm not gonna spoil the end of Resident Evil 7, so never mind. I just like, at least with Requiem, I like the tie-in, right? You have a new protagonist. They've tied in legacy character Leon Kennedy. They've tied in Umbrella. Um, you're in, Raccoon City. Yeah, this is just a great tie-in of new and then old Resident Evil. Let's see. It says they cleaned up the lore. All right, 9 Raccoon City segment looks like Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2004. It's drab and uninspired. Oh, really? Huh. Okay. Yeah, I don't think Raccoon City looks like Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Not in at least the parts that I played so far. But all right, Logic. That's all I have for topics, unless there's anything else you want to cover. No, Logic stepped away. All right. I don't know if we lost Logic, but well, first I wanna thank David Faulkner, or not Faulkner, Falky, for joining us. Really appreciate him taking time out of his schedule to run us through some financials. He had the spreadsheet out. And also want to thank Game Logic. I don't know if you're back, Logic, but also want to thank everyone in the live chat. Really appreciate everyone stopping by, hanging out with us this evening. Please do me a favor, do the YouTube thing, hit the like button, subscribe, hit the bell notification so you're alerted when we go live. And I may do a rant this weekend or Friday, possibly Friday during the day. But keep me a follow on X, BRAP_podcast. That's where I post links to the show when I'm ready to go live. And like I said, I may do a rant for this Friday or sometime this weekend. But again, want to yes, rant. Valor Tree says rant. But anyhow, thanks again, everyone, for watching, and for those who watch the show later on. Again, please hit the like button and consider subscribing. Hit the bell notification so you're alerted when we go live. And give thank you to my co-host here, Game Logic. I don't know if you're back, Logic.
Yes, yeah. Sorry, I had to
Oh.
step away for a second.
All right, no worries.
I did hear the one question you asked, and I'll
Yes.
throw it. So the only other thing I had was check your to the audience, check your feed for the settlement between Google and Epic. Apparently, they settled out of court on this whole topic of the store. For Fortnite to return to the store and other things. I know there's been like 99 false starts on that happening over the last couple of years. I think the judge, I can't remember if it's Doranfort, I think is his name, maybe, or something like that. So that may cause some hiccups just in terms of what's going on in the gaming industry. I know that's mobile, but I think that will have potential knock-on effects. So we will see how it goes.
So that they finally settle that dispute then.
Still they Judge Donato still has their settlement still has to be accepted by the judge.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
The judge's
So it's not finalized yet. Yeah.
Yeah, the judge's first gloss over it was a concern that the settlement would be was of a nature that would make things good for Epic, but not good for every mobile app game developer. So, he has still to rule on it.
Awesome. I'll have to catch up on that. All right. Well, on that note, we are out. Everyone, thank you again for watching, and we'll catch you next time.